The faint hum of Noah's ventilator echoed between the urgent rings of the phone. I quickly wiped my hands and picked up my mother's bright face appeared on the screen. "Rachel got engaged, sweetheart. Your father said he'll cover the entire wedding in Charleston." Behind her, my sister waved, showing off a glittering diamond ring, while my father raised his wine glass. I looked at the surgery estimate, $98,000, lying on the table, and heard my son's labored breathing from the next room. When I asked, "Dad, is there anything left in your retirement fund? I need a loan." His smile faded, voice dropping low. "Gwen, you have to be realistic. We can't cancel a wedding over your situation." That was the moment I understood in my family. Even love had a price, and my son's life wasn't worth a single day of their happiness. That morning, sunlight streamed through the classroom blinds, scattering across the board like shards of glass. The students laughed and chatted over a small experiment, while I forced a smile. I walked from table to table, adjusting test tubes, but only one phrase pulsed through my mind. 2 months. 2 months. Dr. Collins's words still cut like a slow blade. He had spoken gently, almost apologetically, yet each word weighed more than anything I'd ever heard. "If Noah doesn't get the surgery within 2 months, Gwen, he won't make it." I tried to stay calm. But once outside the clinic, I had to lean against the wall to breathe. The June air was stifling, yet my skin felt cold. During the break, I opened my phone. A new email from the hospital, initial payment due, $27,000. Under the table, my hand trembled so hard it spilled my coffee. I bent down to clean it as a student approached. "Miss Gwen, are you okay?" I looked up and smiled. "Just a little tired. Go back to class, honey." When the door closed, I finally allowed myself a deep breath. That evening, I brought Noah home from the hospital. His frame was thin, but his eyes lit up as he told me about the toy robot in his room. "Mom, I named it Atlas. It's really strong." I smiled. "You're stronger than it is." "No," he whispered, panting. "I'm really tired." I brushed his hair gently, the smell of disinfectant still clinging to every strand. A child shouldn't know that scent, but Noah did. Late that night, I sat at my computer, opening the expense sheet. Rent, insurance, medication, unpaid hospital bills. The last line glowed in red. Available balance, $218. I looked at my sleeping boy, the ventilator tube softly rising and falling. A sigh escaped me, tight and painful in my chest. My phone buzzed a message from Mom. Rachel sent her dress-fitting photos. "Look, isn't it beautiful?" Attached was a picture of my sister in a pure white gown, the light shimmering across the lace. I stared at it for a long time, then turned off the screen. For a moment, I saw the distance between us clearly not measured in years, but in our parents' choices. When I gave birth to Noah, they weren't there. They said they were on a business trip in Florida. I signed the C-section papers myself, held my baby alone, and promised him, "Mom will take care of everything, even if no one else does." And I kept that promise. But now I was running out of strength. The next morning, waiting at a red light in front of the school, I saw a billboard. Flexible medical loans, 23% interest. I laughed the bitter kind. Even saving your child had become something to bargain for. That afternoon, I met with Dr. Collins again. He looked up from his files when I entered. "Gwen, I know you're trying, but we're running out of time." "Isn't there any other way, doctor?" "There's no cheaper way, only a faster one." Leaving the hospital, I stood by the curb, watching the traffic blur past horns, screeching tires, the rush of wind all merging into a single chaotic sound, just like my thoughts. I thought of Rachel, of my parents choosing the wedding menu, of my small apartment where every night I listened to the ventilator's rhythm, the only heartbeat keeping me from falling apart. When Noah slept, I reopened an old photo, the two of us as children in the backyard. I remembered what my mother once said. "Rachel is the light of this family. You need to be ordinary." Turns out, in that house, ordinary meant invisible. Outside the window, the streetlight fell across Noah's face. I touched his small hand, warm but weak. "Go to sleep, Noah. Mom will find a way." I didn't know what that way was, only that from that moment, I couldn't wait any longer. Because some things, if you don't save them yourself, no one else ever will. I went to my parents' house on a gray afternoon. The familiar scent of lavender drifted from the porch, but I felt nothing but cold. Mom opened the door, phone still in her hand, her voice cheerful as if talking to someone else. "Gwen, you should have called first. The house is a bit messy. Rachel sent a few new flower samples for the wedding." I looked around. The living room was bright, covered in bridal magazines, table setting sketches, and a list of restaurants marked with notes. No trace that this house had a sick grandchild. My father stepped out, holding a teacup, calm as ever, as if everything in life were under control. "You're here about money again, aren't you?" he asked evenly, not angry, but without a hint of compassion. "I need a loan. I'll pay it back monthly. I took on extra tutoring at school, and I can work nights too." He set the cup down. The soft clink sounded like the end of a sentence. "No one can keep helping you forever, Gwen. You have to learn to let go." I looked up at him, feeling like I'd just heard a verdict. "Let go of who, Dad?" He didn't answer, walked past me and opened the window, as if the air had grown stifling because of my presence. Mom spoke softly, her tone gentle but cold. "Rachel deserves to be happy too. A wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event, you know that." I stood there, looking at the two people who once called me their beloved daughter, now strangers passing by. I wanted to ask if Rachel's happiness was really worth more than their grandson's life, but my throat locked. I knew they wouldn't understand. When I left, I walked for a long time through the damp streets. Outside the bakery where I used to work as a student, I stopped and peered through the fogged-up glass. People were laughing, choosing wedding cakes. The world kept spinning bright and loud, even as one small heart was quietly fading. That night, I turned on my computer. The pale blue light reflected off my tired face. I opened a donation page and typed each word slowly, afraid one wrong phrase would make people doubt me. "I'm Noah's mother. My son needs an artificial heart surgery within 2 months. Any help, no matter how small, could save his life." I uploaded a photo of Noah smiling, holding his little robot taken on a rare day when he didn't need the ventilator. I watched the spinning icon until it finally said, "Your page has been published." In the following days, I checked my phone constantly. Every new notification made my heart jump. A stranger donated $50. A colleague sent $200. A few parents from school shared the post. I was grateful for every small amount, but when the total stopped at $15,000, I felt hollow. I kept teaching, kept smiling, kept pretending everything was fine. But each time I opened my inbox, new hospital invoices piled up. One afternoon in the teacher's lounge, I absent-mindedly scrolled through social media. My mother's latest post appeared, "Fully paid for Rachel's wedding. Thank God for this blessing." Below was a picture of an outdoor banquet in Charleston, golden lights glowing over wine glasses, white flowers lining the aisle. I saw the caption number $220,000. My vision blurred. I didn't know when the tears started, only that I sat there for a long time, until the end of class bell rang. That night, as I placed my hand on the ventilator, Noah opened his eyes and asked weakly, "When can I go home, Mom?" "Soon, sweetheart. Mommy's doing her best." The boy smiled, his eyelids fluttering shut, lashes trembling faintly. I sat there until late at night, listening to the steady rhythm of the ventilator, the small red light blinking like the last heartbeat inside me. I didn't know what I would do next, but if this door was closed, I would find another way. I will never forget that afternoon. The sunlight slanted through the hospital window, dull and metallic. Noah lay on the bed, his small hands gripping the blanket, his breathing so faint that each rise of his chest made me hold my own breath. The heart monitor beeped steadily, but inside me, every beat was breaking apart. "We need to move him to extracorporeal heart-lung support." "ECMO, doctor," Collins said, his tone low and careful. "I need your consent." My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the way despair was slowly crawling through my veins. When the nurse wheeled in the equipment, I called my father. The phone rang for a long time before loud music and laughter came through. "Dad, it's me. Noah's getting weaker," the doctor said. My father's voice cut me off. "Gwen, not now. I'm at the rehearsal dinner. Don't make a scene," someone in the background shouted. The wedding cake arrived. Then the call ended. I stood motionless in the white hallway, phone still in my hand. A nurse passing by touched my shoulder gently, thinking I might faint. But I smiled. Maybe that smile was the only thing that kept me from screaming. That night, Noah held my hand tightly. Amid the sounds of the machines, he whispered, "Mom, can I see Grandma tomorrow?" I bit my lip hard, steadying my voice, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's busy, honey, but she'll come soon." He nodded softly, eyes closing, his damp lashes sticking to his pale cheeks. When dawn came, the sky outside turned bright like a cruel joke. Noah wasn't breathing anymore. Dr. Collins bowed his head, resting a hand on my shoulder. I sat there, holding my son's cold hand, as if waiting for just one more breath. They brought me the death certificate. Just as I signed it, my phone vibrated. A message from Mom. "Don't let your sadness ruin your sister's big day." The entire room seemed to shrink, leaving only the sound of wind against the window and my heart sinking like lead. In my head, I still heard my father's laughter from last night, my mother's voice saying, "Rachel's wedding is what the whole family's been waiting for." They wanted a perfect day and they had it. Somewhere, a violin played at a grand wedding in Charleston. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a cold waiting room, holding a small memorial bag for my child. A young nurse approached, handing me a small wooden box. "We kept a few strands of Noah's hair, in case you'd like to have them." I took it gently, my fingers trembling as they brushed the soft hair. "Thank you." When I left the hospital, I walked for a long time. The wind blew through my hair, and for a second, I thought I heard Noah's voice calling, "Mom," somewhere in the crowd. At the town square, a giant LED screen showed a live stream from Charleston. Rachel in her white dress, my father walking her down the aisle through rows of flowers, applause echoing all around. I stopped, watching the bright light reflect in my tearful eyes. In a whisper I said, "You once told me you'd wear a white suit too, remember, Noah? You said you wanted to be Mommy's groom." A little boy passed by holding a blue balloon. He turned and smiled at me. I smiled back and the tears fell before I could stop them. That night, in my small apartment, I placed the wooden box on the table. The lamp's light glowed faintly over it. In my head, I heard my father's words, "You have to learn to let go." Maybe he was right, except he didn't know that to let go of a child, a mother has to die one more time. Somewhere, Charleston was still shining, they were dancing and raising glasses. And I lit a small candle, so Noah would have a bit of light on his way. The wind blew through, making the flame flicker. In that unsteady glow, I knew something inside me had gone out too, not love, but the belief that my family could care for anyone other than themselves. Rain came suddenly heavy and cold. I knelt down, both hands pressing into the wet soil behind the house, where I had dug a small space between two lilac bushes. The little wooden urn rested in my palm, so light it terrified me to hold. I couldn't believe that all that was left of Noah, his laughter, his hugs, his breath was now inside something so small. I placed the urn down, the rain mixing with my tears until I couldn't tell one from the other. I whispered, almost voiceless, "If the world has no justice for you, I'll make it myself." The wind howled, shaking the branches above me. I took a small piece of wood and carved the name Noah with the old knife I once used to peel apples. Not a grave, just a marker, so I'd know where I buried my own heart. When the rain eased, I went back inside. The floor was slick with footprints. My clothes clung to my skin, freezing, but my mind was sharper than ever. I took out a notebook, opened to the first blank page, and wrote, November 17th. Dad said I have to learn to let go. Below it, I drew a long line like a border between what was gone and what I was about to do. From that day, I began recording everything. Every message, every invoice, every transaction. I searched my old inbox for all the times Mom sent pictures of wedding dresses, and among them, I found an attachment from Dad titled, Rachel's Wedding Financial Plan. I opened it. The numbers were clear: restaurant deposits, music contracts, even the payment for the rehearsal dinner. And in the lower corner, another file appeared: Family Retirement Fund Statement. I read the last line over and over: withdrawal of $220,000, transfer completed. A few days later, in that same inbox, there was another email one my father had accidentally sent to me. Lydia, everything's paid. Rachel deserves her dream wedding. I stared at those words until they blurred. For the first time in my life, I felt something break inside me. But beneath the pain, something else began to rise. Quiet. Methodical. Colder than the rain outside. I bought a new hard drive and started storing everything: Noah's hospital bills, Dr. Collins's letters, scanned surgery invoices, the family's wedding invitations. I labeled each folder, Evidence, Phase 1. Every night after tutoring, I sat in front of the screen until nearly dawn. The rain tapped against the window while I typed line after line. The day my parents refused to help. The day they paid the Charleston hotel contract. The day Noah died. I wrote in small, steady letters, no tremor. Maybe because I knew. Each word was now my only weapon. Some nights, I stayed up until almost 3 a.m. When the rain returned, I opened the window, looking out at the soaked garden where a small mound lay beneath the lilacs. A flash of lightning illuminated the wooden plaque with Noah's name. And in the wind, I thought I heard his voice soft as breath. "Don't be sad, Mom," I whispered back. "I'm not sad, Noah. I'm counting everything they owe." In the days that followed, I lived quietly, like a shadow. At school, I still taught, still smiled, still listened to my colleagues talk about their children. But inside, I had only one goal: to gather enough truth so no one could ever deny it again. When the weekend came, I went to the bank to request copies of old statements. The clerk asked why, and I simply smiled. To preserve memories. She didn't know those memories were proof of betrayal. One late evening, while reviewing data, I found a strange transfer: $15,000 from my father to Rachel's account, 2 weeks before Noah passed away. The note read simply, "A reward for choosing the right man." There was no anger left, only cold clarity. I took a screenshot and saved it in a folder titled Part 2, Motive. And so, night after night passed, quiet and methodical. I collected, organized, rewrote. No one knew, no one asked. Then, one morning, while printing more documents, I realized the hard drive was full. I bought another one and named it Noah's Justice. I didn't know when I would use all of it, but I knew that day would come. One day, they would have to sit across from me, look at the same numbers they once used to measure happiness, and realize some debts can never be paid with money. Rain began falling again, outside the porch, steady, softer. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and in the dark, I heard my heart beat slow but firm. It had learned to beat not from fear but from a promise. 3 years passed. I lived so quietly it was as if the world had forgotten I existed, and that was exactly what I wanted. Every morning, I drove my old car to school, drank coffee from a chipped ceramic mug, and came home to my small apartment at the end of Oak Ridge Street, where everything was so tidy it felt still. At school, they knew me as the dependable assistant director, punctual, reserved, never refusing to help anyone. But at night, it was only me and the pages still labeled Noah's Justice. My tears had long dried. What replaced them was a chilling calm. Perhaps because once you've lost the only thing that mattered, the rest of life becomes waiting or rebirth. I began learning to calculate, to invest, to read financial reports instead of poetry. Every paycheck I received was divided into 3 parts: rent, savings, and one category called unnamed plan. When people asked, I smiled. For the future. No one knew that future wasn't for me. It was for the justice I had promised Noah under the rain that night. One afternoon in May, I met Henry Clark for the first time at a small seminar on educational investment. He was a few years older than me, slim, soft-spoken, with a way of looking at people as if he could see the part they tried to hide. When he heard me say I was looking for a mentor in foreclosure property buying, he tilted his head and smiled. Are you buying to live or to remember? That question made me pause. Maybe he saw something in my eyes. I answered slowly, both. From that day, Henry became someone I trusted enough to share the numbers from my secret plan sheet. He never asked why, he only said, if you want to start over through investment, remember this. Never choose out of emotion. Choose because of timing. I nodded, though deep down I knew I always chose because of memory. The following autumn, he called me, his voice carrying a strange tone. There's a house about to be repossessed by the bank. Its price is nearly half the market value. If you have the funds ready, this is a good opportunity. I asked for the address, and when Henry read it aloud, I froze. Number 2, 14 Maple Street, the house where I grew up. The one where I used to stand on the porch watching my father polish the car under the afternoon sun, my mother trimming roses to place in a crystal vase, and the same house they had chosen to drain their retirement fund for Rachel's wedding. Do you still want me to proceed? Henry asked after a few seconds of silence. I took a deep breath and whispered, go ahead. For the next 3 weeks, I followed every document he sent. Each figure, each certificate, each signature was like a pin piercing my memory. The bank confirmed. The previous owner, Mr. Graham Anderson, had lost his job after his company's financial scandal. The retirement fund was frozen. The bank debt over $90,000. The house would be auctioned publicly at the start of the next month. I printed all the files and laid them on the table. On the last page, I wrote a single line in blue ink. 3 years. 1 promise. 1 chance. The auction took place at City Hall. I sat in the second row, dark coat, hair tied back neatly. The moderator read the property list in a steady voice. When he reached house number 214, Maple Street, my heart pounded so hard my knuckles turned white from gripping my hand. Henry glanced at me and whispered, are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The auction moved quickly. Few people bid. The house was old, and rumors said it was unlucky after the previous owner's scandal. When the gavel came down for the final time, the sound echoed like a reversed verdict. Sold to Gwen Anderson. I went home in silence. Inside the car, Henry asked, do you want to stop by and take a look? The old key still works. I shook my head. Not tonight. But that evening, I drove back alone to Maple Street. The house stood among oak trees, the streetlights casting pale light across the faded gray roof. The upstairs window still had the rose print curtain, the one my mother sewed when Rachel turned 10. The wooden door was worn, the lock rusted. I placed my hand on the wood. It felt like touching the past. The smell of wet soil, of dry grass, of memory, all of it returned. In my mind, my father's voice echoed, you have to learn to let go. And I smiled, whispering into the dark, I've learned, Dad. But I never learned to forget. I stepped onto the porch and laid a dried lilac branch at the corner step, where Noah once sat carving popsicle sticks. Light rain fell, glistening on the old iron fence. And through that rain, I heard again the promise I'd made 3 years ago. If the world has no justice for you, I'll make it myself. Now that justice had taken form, it had walls, a roof, and a street address. And I knew that one more step, the debt from years ago, would be paid in the same way they once chose. The letter was sent on a cold winter morning, printed on thick white paper with the logo of Clark and Associates Real Estate. The subject line was polite, almost reassuring. Opportunity to reclaim property. At the bottom was Henry's neat signature, the legal representative, but not the real owner. I read it again and again. Every sentence was precise, not a word too much or too little. If you are willing, our firm can arrange a meeting for both parties to discuss flexible repayment options. I knew my father would read that line over and over, searching for any trace of hope. My mother would ask Rachel, and Rachel would answer in that calculating tone of hers. They're probably trying to squeeze the price, but maybe we can negotiate. I pictured them at the dining table, still the same old oak one, the only thing left after years of decline. My father might keep his serious expression, but in his eyes, there would be something new fear. The kind of fear I'd never seen before, the fear of losing everything. 3 days later, Henry called me. They replied. He said evenly, though his gaze slowed. They want to meet in person. Scheduled Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock. Good. Henry studied me. Are you sure you want to face them? I can represent. I want to speak myself. It's time. I hung up and looked at the calendar. The meeting fell exactly on Noah's 11th birthday. A strange coincidence, or perhaps the world's way of reminding me that promises never expire. That afternoon, I arrived early. Henry's conference room was on the 8th floor of a glass building, filled with golden afternoon light. I chose the seat at the head of the table, my back to the door, so they wouldn't see my face right away. On the table, I had already placed the documents. Transfer contracts, the new ownership certificate, and payment terms. Everything was legal, flawless. I didn't need triumph. I needed precision. At 10 minutes to 3, Henry came in, adjusting his tie. I told them the actual owner would attend in person, so they're expecting some middle-aged businessman. At exactly 3 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Henry opened it. I heard my mother's voice, first softer, raspier than the woman who once told me I needed to learn to let go. Hello, Mr. Clark. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. This is my husband, Mr. Graham, and our daughter, Rachel. Pleasure to meet you, Henry replied, stepping aside. Please, come in. The investor is already here. The door closed. The sound of footsteps echoed slowly across the floor, stopping only when they saw me. All three froze as if they'd come face to face with the ghost of a past they thought was buried. Rachel was the first to speak. Gwen? Her voice cracked, almost disbelieving. I stood up, adjusted the lapel of my black blazer. The light from the window fell across my face, casting a long shadow on the wall. Hello, Mom, Dad, and Rachel. I walked toward the table, calm, almost businesslike. I heard you're having financial trouble. So, we're talking about money again, aren't we? My mother clutched her purse tightly, eyes reddening, while my father stood frozen, unable to hide his shock. Rachel's voice trembled, though she tried to sound composed. You're the owner of the house? I smiled, but there was no warmth in my eyes. Not exactly. I represent a small trust that specializes in buying foreclosed properties. But legally, this house now belongs to me. Henry sat quietly in the corner, watching. He knew there was no need to intervene. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a reckoning that should have happened long ago. My father finally found his voice. Gwen, you can't be serious. This is our home where you grew up. Yes, I said. And also the place where you withdrew $220,000 from your retirement fund to pay for Rachel's wedding instead of saving your grandson. The place where my son died, while you were choosing flowers for the reception tables. My mother sank into a chair, her hands trembling. Rachel opened her mouth to speak, but my father raised a hand to stop her. He looked at me, fear and shame flickering in his eyes. You bought this house? For revenge? No, I replied. To teach you what true value means. Anything built on neglect will eventually collapse the same way. Through the heavy silence, Henry spoke softly. You may review the contract terms. The owner allows buyback if the remaining balance is paid within 30 days. My father flipped through the pages and stopped at the last number, $92,000. We don't have that kind of money, he said quietly. I looked at him, my smile faint, sharp as a blade. Then maybe it's finally time to learn how to let go. Outside the window, rain began to fall, each drop clear and cold against the glass. Rachel bowed her head, tears hitting the table. I didn't feel relief, nor joy, only a strange stillness spreading through my chest, as if, after 3 years, the storm had finally settled. Henry gathered the files, his tone low. If there's nothing else to discuss, this meeting is adjourned. My father nodded, rising slowly. Before leaving, he turned back to look at me, his eyes a mix of regret, pleading, and that same stubborn pride I remembered too well. When the door closed, Henry turned to me, voice low. Are you okay? I didn't answer right away. The rainlight reflected off the empty table, my faint silhouette blurred in the glass. I'm fine, I whispered. It's just a house. But deep down, I knew it was the last place where my son's voice still lingered. And today, for the first time in 3 years, I'd taken it back. The air thickened as I opened the black leather briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. The rustle of paper echoed faintly in the bright, sterile meeting room. Outside, the afternoon rain had stopped, leaving long streaks on the glass that reflected the faces of the 3 sitting opposite me, my father, my mother, and Rachel, each different, yet all marked by unease. I placed each document on the table deliberately, one by one. The wedding invoices from Charleston, I said calmly, as if reciting a shopping list. Total expense, $220,000. Here's the statement showing the withdrawal from Dad's retirement account. And this? I paused, laying down another sheet, is Noah's hospital bill, dated the same day you paid for the wedding. Rachel shifted in her chair, fingers digging into her palms. My mother avoided my eyes, tears gathering. My father kept his stoic expression, but the muscles in his jaw pulsed tightly. I slid a photo toward them, laminated, edges neat. Noah on the hospital bed, tubes around his face, yet his eyes still shone like a small star. This was taken 2 weeks before he died, I said. Do you recognize this face? My mother broke down, covering her face with her hands. Enough, Gwen. What do you want from us? I don't want anything, I replied evenly. I want you to tell the truth for once in your lives. I placed another paper on the table and set down a pen. This is a written statement. I already drafted it for clarity. All you have to do is sign. My father skimmed it. What are we admitting to? That you had the money, I said without blinking. That you chose to use the money that could have saved your grandson to fund a wedding. And that Noah died because of that choice. The room went silent. Only the ticking of the clock remained, each second like a heartbeat being squeezed dry. Rachel whispered. You don't have to do this. They already regret it. I turned to her, meeting her tearful gaze. Do you know how many 8-year-olds have to die for a perfect wedding, Rachel? Just one. And you watched him die. She said nothing. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't move. My father picked up the paper, scanning each line. His hand trembled before he set the pen down. You want us to write our own sentence? No, I said. I want to hear you say the truth I've lived with for 3 years. My mother touched his arm gently. Graham. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his voice was hoarse. All right, we made the choice. We had the money. And we spent it on Rachel's wedding. I looked directly at him. Say all of it. He swallowed hard. We didn't save Noah. Because we thought he wouldn't make it anyway. My mother sobbed, voice trembling. We were wrong, Gwen. Terribly wrong. I handed them the pen. Sign it. 3 shaky signatures appeared one after another. When the last stroke ended, I folded the paper, slipped it into the folder, and pulled out another stack thicker, neatly bound. And this, I said, is the transfer of ownership for 214 Maple Street. My father looked up sharply. What? This house, I said slowly, no longer belongs to you. I bought it legally 3 months ago. The words fell heavy, like a stone into still water. Rachel shot to her feet, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. You're joking. How could you? There's no joke, I said, glancing at Henry. He nodded in confirmation. All documents are finalized, completed before the bank seized it. I came only to inform you in person. My father's face flushed red as he stood. Gwen, you can't. I cut him off, my voice low but steady. Don't call me that. The air froze again. My mother sat motionless, eyes hollow, as if everything inside her had fallen away. Rachel stared at me, her expression a mix of horror and fury. Why would you do this? To watch them suffer? To get revenge? I shook my head slightly. No. I want them to know what it feels like to lose something they thought would last forever. My father glared at me. Do you even know what you're doing? I know exactly, I said. You have 30 days to move out. After that, the house will be rented or sold. Depends on how I feel. My mother broke into sobs, the sound heavy, aged, raw. I wanted to say something softer, something that still resembled love, but my throat wouldn't move. Maybe compassion had died with Noah long ago. Rachel stepped forward, gripping my hand despite her tears. Do you ever think that by doing this you've become just like them? I looked at her, her eyes bloodshot, her lips trembling. I pulled my hand free, my voice quiet but firm. Maybe, but at least I'm not pretending to be good. Henry stood and motioned that the meeting was over. I gathered the documents, the sound of metal clasps snapping shut sharp and final. The three of them rose slowly, walking out of the room like shadows light, silent, broken. When the door closed, I stayed seated, my hands resting on the cold surface of the table. The light outside had turned gold. On the table, one drop of water remained, maybe from a coffee cup, maybe from my mother's tears. I watched it spread, then fade. A hollow feeling seeped into me, but beneath that emptiness, something else stirred. Not triumph, peace. I exhaled softly and closed the file. On the cover, the bold letters read, Property No. 214, transferred. I ran my finger across the number, feeling like I was touching an old scar, no longer painful, but a reminder that some wounds never really heal. We learn to live with them. When the door closed behind them, the emptiness in the room grew so heavy that I could hear my own breathing. The folders, the signed documents scattered across the table, the faint smell of ink mixed with damp rain, all of it pressed against my chest until it hurt. I didn't know what I was feeling, not triumph, not peace. It was like standing in the middle of a battlefield after the last shot has been fired, unsure who really won. The door opened quietly behind me, and I startled. Henry stepped in, rain still clinging to his coat, his dark hair damp, his eyes calm and steady as always. He set a cup of coffee on the table and pulled out a chair across from me, sitting without a word for several seconds. I thought you left, I said hoarsely. Leave you here? He gave a small, tired smile. I wasn't going to walk away and leave you alone in the ruins. I looked out. Dusk thinned across the glass, last streaks of day fading, and in it, I saw my reflection, a woman in a black suit, eyes weary yet cold. They signed, I said quietly. It's over. Over? Over? He asked. Do you really believe that? Inside, I knew nothing was truly over. Some pain simply changes shape. Some debts can't be measured in money. I bent down to gather the papers, but Henry placed his hand over the stack before I could touch it. Gwen, he said softly, I have to ask, how long do you plan to keep them living in this misery? They chose one child's happiness over another child's life, I replied, slow and steady. I'm just giving them the right price back. Henry looked at me for a long moment, then exhaled, maybe a breath he'd been holding for months. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a gray envelope, and slid it toward me. Then, I've made my choice too. I looked at him, confused. What is this? My part, he said, his eyes not leaving mine. I sent all the documents you gave me, the confession, the invoices, your father's account statements to the state attorney general's office, and the federal investigators. They'll forward everything to the financial crimes division. I frowned, my heart skipping a beat. You did what? I told you before, Gwen, Henry said, voice calm but firm. I'm not a financial consultant. I used to work in corporate fraud investigations, and your father Graham didn't misuse retirement funds. He redirected employee benefit money into his personal investments. I confirmed it. You sent everything? This morning, right before this meeting. You had no right, I began, then stopped. No, he did. Maybe even more than I did. Henry leaned back in his chair, his eyes softening. I know you wanted justice, Gwen, but justice doesn't stop at losing a house or signing a confession. They need to face everything they've done to you, and to everyone else they've hurt. I looked at him, a storm of gratitude and fear rising inside me. I didn't want an investigation. I wanted them to know what loss feels like. No, Henry said, his voice low, final. The real price starts now. I don't know how long I stayed silent, a minute maybe, longer. But in my mind, I didn't see my parents. I saw Noah, his face in that hospital photo, his eyes so bright that even closed, I could still see them. Gwen, Henry said gently. Are you all right? I shook my head, then nodded. My voice came out as a whisper. I don't know. I feel scared. Henry stood, walked around the table, and sat beside me. He rested a hand on my shoulder light, but enough to make me break. Tears spilled, soaking the paper on the table, the one with the 3 signatures I once thought were my victory. I prayed for justice for my son, I said between sobs, but now that it's here, I feel empty, because he's not here to see it. Justice isn't for revenge, Gwen, Henry said quietly. It's to make sure your pain wasn't wasted. I wiped my tears and looked out the window. The sky glowed soft orange, strangely warm. Down on the wet street, a few children ran by, laughing as if the world had never known sorrow. They'll hate you for this, Henry said. But maybe, for the first time in their lives, they'll have to face themselves. I smiled faintly, tears still clinging to my lashes. Then maybe, finally, Noah will know his life meant something. Henry placed the envelope back on the table, then stood, his voice low but lighter than before. I'll handle the rest. You go home, sleep, for the first time in years. I wanted to thank him, to say something that could capture the feeling of being pulled back from the edge, but no words came. I nodded. When Henry left, I stayed there. The door closed softly, as if afraid to break the fragile calm. I looked around the empty room, the place where everything had happened. The confessions, the tears, the truth, and the end. That morning, sunlight streamed through the window, landing on the table where I was signing the final papers. Outside, the maple trees in front of the bank were turning gold, the same soft shade as Noah's eyes in the last photos I had of him. Henry stood beside me, reviewing the contract before nodding. That's it, he said, his tone steady but relieved. The house on Maple Street is officially sold. I set the pen down, my fingers trembling slightly. Every figure, every dollar was clear and transparent, yet inside, I felt anything but certain. Something had closed, and something deeper had opened. Are you sure about this? Henry asked, watching me trace the edge of the contract. I've never been surer, I said. This isn't about them anymore, or even about me. It's just so Noah can still stay. He knew I wasn't speaking in metaphor. Every cent from the house sale, along with 10 years of savings, would form the foundation of the Noah Anderson Foundation, a small organization to help children with heart conditions get the chance my son never had. On the foundation's opening day, I held the ceremony at the school where I worked. The courtyard was decorated with pale blue ribbons, Noah's favorite color. Students ran around hanging balloons and laughing. Their laughter lightened my chest, as if each sound stitched closed another tear inside me. The ceremony was simple. Henry sat in the front row, quiet, his face showing both pride and emotion. I stepped onto the stage, took a deep breath, and looked around the hall. The golden afternoon light washed over every face, watching colleagues, students, and the early supporters of the fund. I held the speech in my hand but folded it. Some words didn't need to be written. There are people who teach us love by taking away what we love most, I began. And there are pains that can't be erased but can still bloom into something else. I paused, then continued. I don't believe in easy forgiveness, but I believe in action. If one child's love can turn into life for many others, then that, to me, is another kind of forgiveness. When I finished, Henry stepped up and handed me a white balloon with a small tag attached. For Noah, the boy who taught his mother how to hope. I held the string gently, then released it. The balloon rose slowly, circling above the schoolyard, reflecting the fading sunlight. I watched until it became a tiny speck in the orange sky, then vanished. A little girl in the front row tugged at my sleeve. Miss, where's the balloon going? I smiled softly. To where the light is, sweetheart. After the event, when everyone had gone, I returned to the hall. Henry was still there, leaning against the railing, sunlight brushing his sleeve. He handed me an envelope and smiled. Keep this. I opened it, a copy of the Foundation's charter. Then I noticed a small addition I hadn't seen before. Under honorary beneficiaries, there was one more name, Gwen Anderson. Henry, what is this? I added it, he said simply. So you'd be saved too in your own way. I couldn't answer, my throat closed. Henry looked at me, not like a man proud of his good deed, but like someone who understood that real kindness is often quiet. The evening wind rustled the ribbons overhead. I saw my reflection in the glass door, a woman who no longer resembled the one she used to be. No longer carrying vengeance, only a tender kind of remembrance, gentle enough to live with. In the distance, a child ran by, his blue balloon snagging on a branch before breaking free, floating upward. I watched it rise, whispering, "Go on, Noah. You're still here in every heartbeat of your mother, and in every breath of the children who get to live." Henry stood beside me in silence. The sunset stretched across the schoolyard, casting a warm glow over everything as if the world itself had finally exhaled, leaving us in the rare peace I had waited for all these years. Sometimes, I think back and realize, forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's learning to let the memories stay without hurting anymore. Life always finds its balance. It asks whether we have the patience to wait. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you felt something in it, please like, follow, and subscribe to join me for more journeys like this one. And what about you? What has ever taught you how to let go?